What is going on, everyone? Tim from Tierphone Orbital. So today's going to be a quick demo video on a Vaders Vault Dark Wraith. I had to look over, I forgot what the name of this hilt was. This is a Vaders Vault Dark Wraith. I don't often get Vaders Vault hilts to do installs on because for whatever reason people are happy with their installs on their Vaders Vault hilts, or just not many people have them. So I don't often get them, but this one, the customer wanted an upgrade. So the old install in this hilt was a little bit of an older version of, how do I put this? It was an older install. It was an older install. It was like a sled chassis. It actually was a base lid install as well. So the customer wanted this to be brought into the new. So this has been installed with a Proffie V3. It is a removable chassis. We did make a compromise in this one as well, though, because of the space requirements, right? So something typical of one of the many things typical of Vaders Vault hilts is this this big old chonker of a switch. This is like a 50 millimeter switch here. 50 millimeter. It's not 50 millimeter. This is like I think this is like a 16 millimeter switch here. So so you've got to allow for that when you're designing for a removable chassis, right? So obviously for this particular hilt, it unthreads here and it unthreads at the pommel. The pommel is removable. So if you can't do a static chassis because the grip unthreads, right? So you can't have a chassis here with a button because you wouldn't be able to unthread the grip. So this is just like an older design of a hilt. Very, very simple design of a hilt. This is something you would see nowadays. I mean, it's just a very simple designed hilt. So to allow for that large switch, we have to design. If we're going for a removable chassis, it has to be a short chassis. And the compromise that you have to make for that is a smaller battery. So we went with an 18350 battery in this one. Removable chassis, Proffie V3, smaller speaker, obviously. So the internal diameter in this hilt is 1 inch as well. So smaller speaker, 24 millimeter speaker. So, which is also larger than the original speaker in this build. This had like an older Veco, like 22 millimeter pancake speaker. So that was upgraded as well. So anyhow, we're going to come into Fusion and talk about the chassis, and then we will come up top, talk about how to use the hilt, talk about some of the, no modifications, but we'll talk about how to use the hilt. And then we will put a blade in it, do a quick demo, and be on our way, right? So let's come into Fusion. All right, so here it is. Very, very simple, short chassis, okay? Gribbly work on both sides of the chassis, okay? At the bottom here, we have a 24 millimeter speaker. Here is our battery tray. This has been sized for a flat top, protected 18350 battery, and this is a very, very tight battery compartment. So to the customer, just so you know, it's going to be super, super tight, right? So flat top 18350 battery. Here is our Proffie board tray. Okay, the Proffie board does slide up underneath this lip. There are 2 forks that also help secure and hug that Proffie board in place. Okay. On this side, there is a kill switch, and they've also added 2 rectangular LEDs for a little bit of extra accent. Okay. And just like a knurling pattern on the waist of the chassis. I've been doing this a lot lately with my chassis. This comes out relatively well with FDM printing. By the way, this chassis is all FDM. I'm neglecting to mention which chassis are FDM and which are resin lately, and I need to get back to doing that because people are asking, hey, is this resin? Are you still doing resin? I'm still doing some chassis in resin, but for the most part, all of my chassis are now in FDM. And I'm really, really happy with the amount of detail I'm getting out of my FDM printer, right? 6-rail PCB up top. This is from Stardust Sabers, right? And this is what makes a connection to the upper part of the PCB. I made a very simple PCB holder, all-in-one PCB holder and PCB emitter, lit PCB emitter that lives in the upper part of the hilt, right? And that is it. Let's come up top. Okay. So here it is. This is the Vaders Vault Dark Wraith. I'm just now realizing why they called it the Dark Wraith, because this does look like something that is from Lord of the Rings. Looks like it's straight out of Lord of the Rings, except for this giant switch here. But yeah, other than that, I just realized that. I just put two and two together. But yeah, other than that, that's it. Just a hilt with two buttons. So to get at your well, first of all, let's talk about why we went with this chassis. Like, so I was mentioning when we were at the top of the video. So, you know, the hilt does unthread. You know, I really don't know why you would make the hilt unthread here. If you're gonna have a giant AV switch here, and have an AV switch here, which, by the way, oh man, all right, I'm gonna bleed into like a little bit of a op-ed here. So during this install, right? So these switches thread. These giant switches thread, right? So if you're gonna wire up this switch, right? So let me just like take you through what happens here, right? So you're wiring up this switch, which by the way is also lit. So you've got 4 conductors in the back of this switch. So you're wiring up this switch, la-di-da, wiring up my switch. Then you've got to thread this thing, okay? So now you've got 4 conductors coming into your board or going into your PCB in my case. Now you're wrapping, and it's not a short thread either. It's like an inch long switch, almost. Now you're threading this switch, and you're threading it, and you're threading it. Now you're threading all of those conductors. And you're threading them, and you're threading them, and you're threading them. Like, so I don't know why you would design the hilt so that you're threading the switch into the hilt. I understand that the switch is designed that way. I get that. I understand that you can probably put a lock nut behind this switch, which also, like, us installers hate that, by the way. Like, we don't like doing that. So, you know, it would be a lot easier if the threads on the grip side were deleted and you just either silicone glued this or put silicone tape into it and just kind of press fit it into the hilt, which in this case is what I did, right? Like, you don't want to thread a switch into a hilt that has been wired up. It's just like, you know, you're gonna break the wires. It's just like, it just causes a huge headache, right? So when you're wiring this up, why are you wiring this up to a grip that's going to thread into an upper emitter? Like, it's just like, I don't understand the design behind it. Like, I get why you want to make a hilt modular and you want to call it premium. I get that. But it's just, I don't know. There's just some things that I just like, I don't know. It just makes me scratch my head scratchers, right? So another thing, I am a huge fan of these steel ball tactile switches. But when you're wiring these up, you've got to wire them up and then you've got to glue them from the inside. Okay? So this is another reason why if you're doing an install where you've got an internal PCB holder or you've got a floating chassis, you've got to wire this up. And then you've got to glue it in place. So I guess that's probably why they designed it so that this unthreads, so that they could glue this in place. They could wire it up, unthread this, stick their finger in there and glue it in place, or have like a PCB holder or like a little press fit thing that holds it in place. I just like, it's an older design is what I'm getting at. Like, it's just an older, there are better ways that we do things now. So yeah, it's just, I mean, I get why this is threaded. It's threaded, and that's fine for the install that it had. I guess is that's how I should have put that, right? Having a threaded switch is fine if you have a sled chassis, because you can have your leads come all the way down here, then you can thread it, and then you can unravel that thread. Because once you're threading your switch, you're also wrapping those wires and wrapping them. If you've got an upper PCB up here, all you're doing is just kinking those wires and you're wrapping them until they break, right? I should have let off with that, right? Probably sounded like I was picking apart the design of the hilt, which I was a little bit, but I mean, but yeah, like, It's an older design hilt. When you're trying to design a new chassis system around an older hilt, you've got to make a few compromises, and that's what I did with this switch. Okay. So that was a roundabout way of saying we don't need threads anymore. Okay. Anyway, with all that out of the way, let's talk about how to use this hilt. Okay. So here's the chassis, short chassis. It's been given the pewter rub and buff treatment. There are those two rectangular LED accents. I've already put the battery in this guy. This is a tight battery compartment, just so you know, the customer. 24mm speaker down here. Here is our Proffie board. And that is it, right? Down in the pommel, there is a very, very short... Oh, it's in here. Pommel spacer. That just lives in the pommel. So just to you, the customer, keep note of that, okay? Once you put your battery in, you can hit your kill switch. There are those two lit accents, red and yellow. Then you can put your chassis in the hilt. So I actually have been doing this. You put your chassis in the pommel and then thread the pommel into the hilt. And then you're ready to go. Okay? So that switch is lit.
Lord Vader.
Okay? And that's it. Let's come down to the bottom. All right. So there it is, the Dark Wraith. Okay, let's put a blade in it. Okay, so this is a 1-inch blade holder. There is a set screw right around front here. You want to rest your blade on those PCB pins and then tighten that set screw around front, just so it's hugging that blade. Let me get the right. Just so it's hugging that blade. Okay. And then you're ready to go. Okay. What else we got on here?
It is obvious that this contest cannot be decided by our knowledge of force. To do better than that.
One more.
Smooth Jedi.
All right. So that is it. That is the Dark Wraith from Vaders' vault. An older hilt and an older install brought into the new, right? So to the customer, thank you very much for trusting me with your install. If anyone has any questions about this particular install or anything really, please do not be a stranger. And with that being said, may the force be with you always. Have a good one, everybody.